Well, today's video is all about you. And then we're going to talk about the trajectory of your life and also your vision, because they go hand in hand. Well, hi, my name is Non-Monogamous Mark, and I'm the Executive Director and also the co-founder of Non-Monogamous Lifestyles, where we help you to create a new normal in your life that's a non-monogamous normal, it's a sexual normal, and it's a normal where your life thrives financially, with your health and fitness, with your recreational pursuits, with your relationships, and also your sex life. And so if you want to know more about that, then stay tuned to the end of the video. But we're going to get on to talking today about your trajectory and also your vision. You see, the trajectory in your life is something that you should be constantly evaluating and tuning up and tweaking. You know, just like if you were playing a guitar or musical instrument, you know, every time you pick that musical instrument up, you kind of have to tune it in a little bit. And our lives are the same way, and that our lives need a constant tune-up and be tuning in all the time. And we have trajectory in our life that we need to look at, and this will be telling you about how much you need to tune up your life. What is the trajectory? Well, think of your life in all the various areas and ways that you can live. You know, you have little components of your life. You know, like for me, I always think of my financial aspects of my life, my health and fitness. I think about the recreation that I enjoy. I think about the relationships, both professionally. I mean, that was something that at the end of last year, I realized that I needed to tune up my relationships professionally. The people I was getting information from and where I was associated with, some of my relationships are great, but not all of them. Some were holding me back. And so I did some tuning up. And so your relationships, so that could be professionally, and that could be with your friendships, that could be your romantic relationships, and then your sex life. Being that we're non-monogamous, you know, sex can be recreationally, sex can be involved in a relationship, like a friends with benefits, where there's not like any deep relationship going on. It can also be something where there's a deep, loving, long-term, committed type relationship going on. And so this is where in my life, I always want to think about the trajectory and where my life is heading. Not on any one day or even any 1 week, but I certainly from month to month, I pay attention to what direction it's going and how steep it's going in that direction. You know, and so for instance, you know, I think about health and fitness. You know, and with health and fitness, you know, I'm 60 years old. And when I was 49 years old, you know, friends would joke around and be telling me, you know, Mark, it's all downhill from here. And certainly that is how most people live their lives and define their lives, and that's their normal. But that's not the normal that I was going to define my life by. And I created a new normal in my life. And so that's where with Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, we want to help you to create new normals in all the areas of your life so that those normals are intentional and they're deliberate, they're conscious decisions that you make. And so that's where we need to constantly tune up the trajectory in our life. And I know for the last 2 years, you know, I've made a number of videos. You know, I've worked out at the gym, I have done juice fast, I've been very conscientious of my eating. I switched about 2 years ago to totally eating organic. Started my journey 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago making that real commitment. Because, yeah, it's a financial commitment to eat organic, because your cost for organic food is a lot more than your cost for non-organic food. But it was a process, though, where I was always looking at and evaluating the trajectory of my own life in all the areas: financial, health and fitness, and recreation, and relationships, and sex, and all of the things that encompass our life. Then I'm always looking at that trajectory and tuning it up. And, you know, for some people, that trajectory starts to turn down. It's like a cigarette. You know, if I'm sitting here talking to you today and trying to talk to you about starting to smoke cigarettes, you'd think I'm crazy. You know, it's like we all know today that that's not something I want to do. I mean, the long-term implications of that for my health are huge. Well, that's really what your trajectory is about as well. You see, because if your life just takes a little slight dip in its trajectory, the long-term implications, the farther you keep going through life, just a small little dip in your trajectory, then the farther you keep going in your life, that little dip becomes a huge gap from where you want to be and from where you actually are. And so I always pay attention to my trajectory. Where do I want to be and where am I? And so I'm constantly tuning up my trajectory. So if I need to get it going at a steeper grade to get me where I'm going because it's just not happening, then I'm constantly evaluating and asking myself, well, what do I need to do? Things need to change in our lives. And so I've gotten to where I've made change my friend. Change is a good thing in my life, not a bad thing. Because I don't want to get stuck just cruising along day to day and change doesn't happen. And so, sometimes that means that I have to change my friends, and that's a good thing. It may mean that I'm not hanging out with the same people anymore as I did before. And not that they're bad people or I'm beyond them or above them. It's just that our lives take different turns. And so as they take different turns along the journey of our lives, we need to make changes in order to look out for ourselves. You really need to look out for yourself and not all the others around you first. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. And so be looking out for yourself. I get people that will go ahead and get in contact with me and maybe they want to, get together and meet and what have you. And I sometimes will take and look at them and I just want to ask them, but I don't. I just want to ask them, what are you doing for your health and fitness? What are you doing for your finances, for your relationships and recreation? Instead of just complaining and living by default, that's where you just go through day by day, just really not knowing where you're going. And this is where the vision becomes very important in your life. And that you need to have a vision for your life so you know where you're going. And so back when I was 49 years old, that was 11 years ago. When I was 49 years old, I had a vision that I wanted to be able to be 80 and 90 years old. And at the age of 80 and 90 years old, I wanted to be having sex that was more frequent, that was better, that was longer, and greater than the sex that I had when I was in my 30s or even my 40s. And where most people, though, as they get into their 50s, or maybe even before, that trajectory just starts to turn downhill a little bit. And when they talk about their sex life, the best sex of their life was always like 20, 30, 40 years ago. Or maybe 10 years ago if you're not as old as I am. But so ask yourself, do you want to be able to take and look forward to the next year of having the best sex of your life? Or do you want to be able to, keep thinking that, okay, I guess I've had the best sex of my life and it's just downhill from here? The same thing with your recreational pursuits. The things that you want to enjoy physically and recreationally, whether it be hiking or biking or here in Ventura, surfing's a big deal. It's a big deal for me, but there's a lot of people that are really into surfing. So whatever you're into with your own pursuit of recreation, how is that going? Is it something that is slowly turning down in your life? Well, maybe it needs a tune-up. And so think about the trajectory on that. But where do you want it to be? And that's where your vision. You need to have vision for yourself in these things, as to what you want to do. And so my vision, back when I was 49 years old, was that I wanted to be a long-distance touring bicyclist, where I wanted to go on bicycle rides that were 1,000 miles long, or maybe even longer. That I wanted to be able to go out and riding 100 miles a day on my bicycle. Not a motorcycle, my bicycle. And I want to be able to do that when I'm in my 80s and my 90s. Because I had a few people that I met in my life that when I was in my 40s, I couldn't bicycle anything close to how they could. And they're in their 80s and a few in their 90s. There weren't very many people I met along the way and saw as examples for me in my life like that, but they're out there. And so what kind of example do you want in your life? Do you want those examples that just let themselves go with their recreational pursuits, with their health, their fitness, and all the things in their life, they just kind of let it go, and slowly it starts to slide downhill, and the best is always behind you, not in front of you. That's just not the life that I wanted. And because I didn't want that life, when I was 49 years old, I started making some big changes. That's when I transitioned my monogamous marriage from monogamy to non-monogamy. Because, you see, I saw that for what I wanted was just a really great sex life. What I had was a lousy sex life. And so something had to change. And I had to be willing to risk the potential that my wife would divorce me because I want a really great sex life. And be honest, at that point in my life, when I was 49 years old, I had been married for over 20 years, and the sex between my wife and I was always not 100%, but it was terrible. And it was something that my wife and I constantly talked about. And so I've lived with that for over 20 years, and having been a virgin when I got married, I just started to think. And by the time I got 49 years old, I said, I don't want to continue with this trajectory. I don't want to continue with this path. And so I'm going to take and see what we can do at making some changes. And we've tried all kinds of things over 20 years of our life. And so I thought, well, maybe the change we need to make is have sex with someone else. Since I was a virgin when I got married, and so was my wife, maybe we need to have sex with someone else to see what it really can be like. And that's then when I started talking to my wife, and it took us 2 years to transition our marriage. That's all on in other videos. But we opened our marriage, and I started living my non-monogamous life. And so, it did. It took us 2 years, but we started talking about it. And just the process of starting to talk started to tune that trajectory up a little bit, where I could see that, okay, I'm now heading closer in the direction of what I really want, to be able to explore my sexuality and experience a great pleasure. And not only for myself, but to also have the thrill of giving great pleasure. And so I wanted that experience. But here's where I wanted. What I wanted was way up here, and where I was way down here. And so I had to tune up my trajectory. Financially, it's the same thing. And so that I'm constantly looking and thinking about how am I going to tune things up. People say, well, as you get older, then you kind of peak out financially, and then you go to retiring, and it's just on a fixed income, and it's all downhill. And, that may be your normal. It's not mine. My best days financially are ahead of me. And I've made my best month I've ever had. I made $65,000 in 1 month. The month before that, I made $45,000. So in 2 months, I made $110,000. Now, for me, that was a fortune to make. Now, I had good months all throughout the year. My worst month of that year, I made about $25,000. And so for that particular year, that was the best year financially that I'd had in my life. And that was, for me, that was incredible. It was an incredible year. But you see, I don't want that to my best year financially to remain in my past. I'm looking forward to that future. I know what I want, and I know where I'm going, and so I've got to constantly tune myself up and tune my trajectory in and look at where am I headed and where am I at and where am I going, so that I know if I need to tune that trajectory in or not. One of the things over the last 2 years, I've talked a lot about my weight, and that's been a real limitation for me, because for many years, I just put on weight every year. A couple pounds a year. That's all, just a couple pounds. And that's pretty normal for Americans. We call it the standard American diet. The nutritionists call it the SAD diet. S-A-D, standard American diet. And it really is. It's a sad diet. And I'm learning more and more how sad that diet is. Watched a documentary this couple months ago called What the Health. I put a lot of information out there on Facebook about that, because it's so important. That was probably the biggest change for me last year. That documentary made in my life. That documentary, What the Health. You see, because for years I love watching documentaries because I like to fill my head with really good information, but information that you're not going to find on the Saturday evening news or Friday evening news or Tuesday evening news. But information that you're not going to find on standard TV. And so I love documentaries. And so for years I've been watching regularly documentaries about our food and things that we eat and our health-related issues with regard to food and our medical industry in the United States. You see, because I don't participate in the medical industry in the United States. The United States, we spend more money per person for health care than anywhere in the world. It's ridiculous how much money we spend on health care. And we call it health care, but in reality what it is, it keeps you in that revolving door of the healthcare system, so you keep spending your money, more and more of your hard-earned dollars, on dependent care. Because it's just keep you dependent on the system. And when I watched that documentary, What the Health, boy, that really showed that what I've been saying this for years, that we don't have health care, we have dependent care. And that documentary, What the Health, really showed me that and proved it. Organizations like American Cancer Society and the American Diabetes Association and the American Lung Society and all these different companies are non-profit organizations that I thought were great organizations. Yeah, it turns out they just want to get you in their door and keep you dependent, going around in that little turnstile so that you never get well, you just keep coming back. You see? And so I've learned that there are ways that you can actually get well. But the doctors, they don't want that, because if you get well, they're not going to continue making money off of you. And the whole medical industry, the pharmaceutical, surgery, all of that whole industry, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. Look at how our hospitals are building up and building up. Well, I've seen this and observed this in my life now for 40 years, and I just said, I don't want any part of that. And so instead, I took it upon myself to make sure that my trajectory is healthy. And so my vision for myself, now I've got a vision for myself of being very active and healthy well into past 110 years old. Is it possible? Absolutely it's possible. Even if you have abused your body, like I abused my body until I got into my 49 years old, I started making changes in my life to tune up that trajectory. And, it's never too late. Okay, well, my battery on my camera went dead, and so I'm turned around now here and using the camera on my computer. And I'll finish out this video for just the last couple minutes here with my computer camera. But, I was just about to go into telling you about a book that I'm reading now called How Not to Die. And this book is written by a doctor that his grandma, when she was like 60 or 62 years old or something like that, she was sent home to die with less than 6 months left to live. You see, she had already been through, this is a number of years ago, and she had already been through multiple heart surgeries, was on a ton of medications for heart ailments and all kinds of other things. And so she was having complications and problems with her health, and she went off to the doctor, and sadly, there was so much scarring in her veins and arteries and all that kind of stuff, apparently, that they could not do another surgery. And so they sent her home with 6 months or less to live. And so this guy who wrote this book, this doctor, at that point, he was just a teenager. And that had such a profound impact on him. Grandma's going to die. But yet there was these articles coming out in the newspaper about this doctor in Florida, because they were in California. And there was this doctor in Florida. A lot of people kind of figured he was a bit of a nutcase. And but there was some people that were paying attention to him and reporting on things that he was saying, and it caught this grandma's attention. And she flew from California to Florida because he was going to be opening up a new kind of clinic in Florida. And she flew to Florida, and she was there, one of his very first patients. In fact, then when he wrote a book that ended up being a bestseller, she ended up being in the book as a case study. Because yes, it's confirmed, she had less than 6 months to live. And so as soon as she got to his clinic, then he put her on a plant-based diet. You see, because food can heal your body. Food can be medicine. Not like the pharmaceuticals that were shoved down our throats, where they'll never heal us. They just keep us dependent. But food can actually heal you. And so there she was, and put on this diet. And, so she started eating a plant-based diet. Well, fast forward over 20 years, and Grandma's still living. Her life, when she was supposed to die in 6 months, it continued on because food was healing her body. And food became her medicine. She got off of prescriptions. You might have heard a little bit about that doctor that she flew off to, because he's become kind of well known, came out with a couple best-selling books, but it was Dr. Pritigan. And so this woman's grandson, he went off to college and then went on to medical school. In medical school that they're given, depending upon the medical school you go to, you're given less than 14 hours of training in actual nutrition. Less than 14 hours. They know nothing about what food can do for you and having a healthy body. All they know is what is fed to them in their training. You got to have dairy, you got to have meat, you got to have this, you got to have that. But yet the evidence shows that you don't need all that stuff. And you're in fact healthier and better without all the stuff like drink milk for calcium. You're better without it. Because that calcium in milk, they've proven now, gives you cancer. And then, of course, all the other food groups that we're supposed to be eating from to be healthy. No, they don't help you to be healthy. They just help you to be dependent. And not overnight, like that pack of cigarettes. If you pick it up tomorrow and start smoking half a pack or two cigarettes or half a pack or even a pack a day, you're not going to die tomorrow or next week or next month. But 15, 20, 25 years, it'll make a difference in your health and your longevity of your life. And it's the food we're eating is the same way. You are killing yourself with the food you are eating, and you don't even know it because you think that that's what you're supposed to eat. You're being brainwashed. I watched a documentary last night called Forks Over Knives. We don't need knives to be cutting up all of our food. All we need is forks so that we can eat the good food. And so this documentary I watched, Forks Over Knives, talked about the studies that have been done that prove that you don't need what we're being told we have to be healthy. Things like dairy and all the meat, and we need protein. We're told we need to eat meat because you need your protein. Well, that the protein that we get from meat, how that gets to those animals? It comes from plants. That's how the animals get the protein. So I won't go into all that information now in this video, but this book that I'm getting into is called How Not to Die, and it's absolutely fascinating because it really does come out from a very strong factual place about how you can totally change and turn your life around just by eating a healthy, plant-based diet. And so I hope that I can help you in this video. Think about some of these things to tune up your trajectory and have a vision for what you want in your life, for your health, for your finances, for your recreation, for your relationships, for your sex life. Have a vision for what you want in your life so that you have something to measure and tune up to. If you don't have a vision for the life that you want to have, then yeah, you can just float it around along, and yeah, the best years will be behind you instead of having the best years yet to look forward to. So I hope that you'll look forward to the best years as being a part of Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. If you'd like to know more about our association or also know more about myself, Non-Monogamous Mark, and my life, then click on that link in the description and get on our email list. And we'll help you to
have a vision and keep tuned up so that you create a new normals in your life, in your community, and in your culture so that you can live closer to the life that you really want.